Welcome to Wellthy Living Conversations. I'm Lisa, your host and founder of Wellthy Living. It's here that I connect with a variety of wonderful people to have inspiring and insightful conversations to help you live a meaningful, connected and well life, both personally and professionally. So in today's episode, the focus will be on workplace and how it is one of the key pillars to create connection for many people. In 2020, we saw a dramatic change in the way people work, with most being forced to work from home. As here in Australia, we're slowly coming back to the workplace, I'm wondering whether this last year has changed the future landscape of workplaces and spaces. I have an old friend and founder and CEO of Australia's largest privately owned co-working operator, Hub Australia, Brad Krauskopf. Did I say that right?
Oh, Krauskopf.
Krauskopf, almost.
Yeah.
I should check that before, shouldn't I?
Probably never said my surname before.
No, I don't think I have actually. So I've got Brad with me today to delve into this topic and explore the impact that workspace has on connection, leadership, and the overall well-being of a business and its people. So Brad is a national leader in the co-working space. He founded Hub in 2011 with a vision to develop a national network of workspaces to help businesses and their teams love where they work. So Brad, I love this vision, but before we dig into it and how and why how to achieve this and why you want to achieve this, can you share a brief description of what a co-working space is, how the concept began, the workplace setup, and who it currently caters for?
Yeah, sure thing. And look, co-working has constantly evolved, and indeed it's going through another rapid evolution. But I suppose the distinguishing feature, though, is when you set up a co-working space, it's with an intention to create connection, to create community between the people there, and then to different business opportunities, to different learning and different social connections. So, the co is about community and connection.
Yep.
And that involves both setting the physical space up in a certain way, how you service and activate that space on an ongoing basis, and then finally is the culture that you create at that space. Back in the day, the first kind of, I guess, workspace as a service, if you want, was the serviced office. That had a lot more of a focus on the amenity, the secretary on the phone, the different ways to show that you were a bigger business than you were.
Yeah.
Whereas though, coming out of the GFC, people tapped into co-working spaces and co-working communities largely for the connection and the community being the initial driver. So people had kind of essentially lost their jobs during the GFC. There was a huge increase in what became known as the freelance economy, which initially was, people had lost their jobs and they started their own businesses and were self-employed. It was terribly isolating working from home.
Yes.
And co-working spaces became an avenue for individuals and for startups to come together and work on their initiatives together, or by themselves, but doing it side by side somebody rather than being at home.
Absolutely. I mean, I always thought of co-working spaces as a place which catered for freelancers and entrepreneurs and startups and stuff like that. So has that evolved now, and are we seeing more bigger companies starting to use co-working spaces and give up their leases or not give up their leases?
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. Look, I think it was around 2015 where I noticed, a shift where our member community had more people that were employees of the organisations that based themselves at Hub, rather than the freelancers like the founder or the self-employed professional. And as soon as that happened, Hub's focus shifted to, well, how do we build connection and how do we build community and how do we build learning opportunities for the teams of those organisations. Some other co-working operators remain focused on the freelancer or on the startup. Quite often, though, I guess with a long arc now, a decade of co-working in Australia, many of those initiatives either are not-for-profit, or there's a level of government funding, or there's a level of you're delivering programming as opposed to just the workspace. In order to deliver a premium workplace experience, you really need to have a lot more of your revenue coming from established companies where, for instance, if they've got a six-figure person, the concept of paying an extra $1,000 to have an amazing workspace which helps keep that person around, it's a good investment.
Yeah.
And Hub worked out in 2016 when we opened up Hub Southern Cross, which was the first, I guess, call it hospitality-led co-working space in the country. There was a cafe, the whole service level was all about how do we bring how hotels are and that 5-star experience, how do we bring that into a workspace? We discovered there that, where we could add the most value to customers in a business model that worked, was offering that premium experience for teams and their businesses.
Yeah, fantastic. It makes me want to come and work in a workspace. No, and it's very different. Like, I've walked into a number of different co-working spaces to have meetings, or today to record this podcast with you, and it does feel premium. It does feel like you've sort of gone out on a social excursion almost. So, it's a really nice environment to be. So the workplace, everyone knows that it's a space for people to interact, and it can provide a value of belonging, which is kind of something that you just sort of shared with the whole idea of community and connection that these places bring. Yet in 2020, we saw companies experienced a time when employee and customer connection was limited to virtual meetings and virtual gatherings and catch-ups.
Yep.
Now, research has shown that the lack of human connection and loneliness increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, depression, and anxiety. And when we're lonely, we're less engaged, less productive, and less creative. In your opinion, does working from home pose a threat to the personal well-being and organisational performance?
Yes, but also what I think it's not going to be black or white. We're not all going to work from home. As is not everybody coming into the office every single day, is also, in the best interest of both the company and the person. So I think, for every company, they need to find what's the mix of work from anywhere options, which will include work from home, working near home from a suburban location so you can cut the commute but still be in an office, or coming into the into the head office. And I do think for larger organisations, the head office is going to still remain in the CBD. When I was 20 and 30, back in the day, I wanted to come into the city. I still do love coming into Melbourne, but it was a much more important part of my identity and what forth back then before you have a family. I think it's the organisation needs to figure out how are they going to have the best setup so that they can then attract the best talent. People. There has been, I think, a shift in the power balance between employer and employee over the last 12 months, which I think is a good one. Employees have shown that they can still be productive when they're not in the office.
Yep.
And I guess there's going to kind of be a quid pro quo there. Like they're going to expect to get something out of that. If I'm going to keep on producing and do that, even more productively than what I was doing before, I want you in return to give me some flexibility to work in the way that also suits my personal life outside of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of what you said is definitely the direction of where I really wanted to take a lot of this conversation as well. So in saying all that, and you sort of said, there are things that are going to meet some employees' needs and others aren't by working at home or having the combination of different things. What employee needs were and weren't met, do you think, from working from home? I mean, you mentioned the commute being one of them, but what other things do you think are met by working at home and what do you think aren't?
Yeah, first up, on the what's not achieved, one thing to remember is, the coming into the office is not just about being creative and innovative and learning for your company. It's also for you. People want to do activities that create value. People want to learn from other people, and people want to be productive. It's a good thing to be able to do that. So when you took that away from people feeling like that they were a part of something bigger and being able to come into the office, you took away something of what it meant to work with an organisation.
Yes.
Now, we did fill in the gaps much better than what we thought we were going to do. At the start of it, the whole world's coming to an end, and then it shifted to well, people are never coming back to the office. And then, of course, one Zoom call's too many or one too many stay home from school days. And people were just biting at the bit to get back to the office. But yes, we worked out how to do it. And we also proved that there are certain activities. I've ended up still working from home one day a week, and I am tremendously productive for that day on things that, and I don't even schedule Zoom calls on that day that I work from home. I just get stuck into all of the stuff that I want to do, and then but then I'm thoroughly enjoying my getting back to the airport and getting interstate to see the teams and customers that we have interstate. I guess some would say that I've got the luxury to do that because I'm in the position that I am in the company. But I don't know. This is where I think that power balance has shifted. All of the, we do have a lot of hospitality staff at the hub, which means that, you do actually have to be there. But, whether it's the hospitality people or whether it's the back office people, people that end up working at hub, it's not like they didn't have other options of where to get a job. We attract and retain a really good level of team member here. And so, if I don't provide the flexibility or working environment that person wants, they're just going to leave.
Yes.
Because they can, and I think what's happening is we're seeing that they will leave if you can't come through with the goods of providing flexibility and providing a workspace that that the people love.
Yeah, absolutely, and I definitely agree. And this whole idea of the balance of power shifting is real progression and forward. I think the way that things are going to go in the culture of companies moving forward, and it's humanising it all, and I think it's a really good move.
What I would say there is in that balance of power, as in it does put a big amount of pressure on that person, because also if you take this out to people can work from anywhere, and you would have heard the examples of then suddenly what's the difference if that person's sitting in Byron, working from up there
on the beach.
And look, it's kind of like it sounds luxurious, and it never is that. But the bit that the point that I wanted to address there was that in the past, if you were a marketing person wanting to work at Hub, then you're competing against all the best talent in Melbourne who would come into Hub to work on that role. Now suddenly are we saying that, well, you're competing against all the best marketers in Australia,
yes,
or indeed overseas, because I don't care where you are.
Yeah.
I just want the best.
And that's something that I definitely want to also address going forward as well. I've got in my notes that I really wanted to talk about that and the opening up of the market in that sense as well, and being able to get the best talent, and are we then being able to address the diversity issue. But let's come back to that. So do you think that, like, obviously it sounds very much like that this experience that we've all had in the last 24 months or so has given an opportunity for a changing workplace model going forward?
Agreed.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to snap back to what it was.
No. And from what you've discussed and what I've read about some of the things that you've put forward is this idea of this hybrid working arrangement, whereby you're kind of working in sometimes at home, sometimes in the other office, sometimes in a co-working space, sometimes anywhere, etc. So it's this flexible work model. So you talk about this being the future and what Hub offers. So does this, what does this actually mean? Like, does it mean like there's still structure, or there is no structure, or everybody just does it and does the balance of the week however they like? Is it giving like enormous power to the employees and their choices?
No, look, I think one of the options that I know companies are looking at the moment is the way that you're going to provide the flexibility is you still do need to bring some order to it as well. Like if everybody chooses to never come in.
Free range work.
Then, exactly. Yeah, it's like, well, what are you going to get? So I think if we go into this thinking that it's every man or woman for themselves, and that flexibility means that you can do whatever you want, it's going to be a glorious failure. It really is. There are still going to need to be some etiquette and I guess culture and ways of doing things. And, there are a lot of, like I've seen a few consultancies which do a lot of leadership training and culture and that, and they've almost pivoted to, hang on, we're going to try and work out how do we advise on this hybrid working thing.
Yes.
And I had somebody call me yesterday morning, and she literally kind of said, well, we keep getting these questions, but in some sense, I don't think we're very good at hybrid working yet. We all want it, but we actually haven't had training. The tech is all over the shop. It's not an equitable spread of what everybody's work from home conditions or work near home conditions are. So I think we've got to recognise that if we are going to master this new way of working, then we've got to give ourselves some time to learn and figure out, well, how are we going to do this? Learn
or unlearn.
Exactly. Because it's not as simple as just we're going to jump on a Zoom call.
Yes. Yeah, it's not as simple as just having the tech in place.
No, it's not.
The tech is the easy part.
It is. Actually, it proved to be easier than what we thought. It's funny, I think when everyone was using Zoom, it suddenly was easy. But, now I'm seeing that when we're getting back into the mix of, people being at the office and at home, we need to figure out, well, where does Microsoft Teams sit? Where does some of the expensive video conferencing equipment that was in the rooms? Like we actually got ripped out all of our expensive video conferencing solutions and put in new expensive video conferencing solutions. But, things that aren't tech, that are more tech agnostic.
Yes.
Because, we cater lots of different companies that have different software.
Yeah. Look, it's really interesting for me because I've been in the entrepreneurial world for a really long time now, or for probably at least 10 years. And in that mix being a work from home mum as well. And we've been doing this way for a really long time. So when COVID hit and we were all working, we didn't have as many maybe, I didn't personally, my clients had dropped off because they didn't have money, a lot of them being business owners or small businesses. And so apart from that being an issue, the way of working was really no different. And so this working of anywhere, you're talking about this sitting on a beach in Byron and stuff. I mean, that's just like the life of a nomad entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And they've been really successful at doing that. And it's like that companies are now realising that they've got to jump on board with some of this innovative way and more humanising way where work-life balance is becoming a redundant thing and work is part of life, as opposed to this balance, but them being two separate things.
Like from having seen this as well, like particularly when there was everybody going into the freelance economy, what a lot of people don't talk about is all of those self-employed people that the moment that they could get a job, they so happily went back to being employed. Like it takes a lot of discipline and control and, there's certain traits that allows somebody to be able to do what you've done for the last 10 years.
Yeah, we are the most employable people in the world at the moment because we've had so much experience in this space.
You have, but like not everybody's got that skill set.
Yeah.
And indeed, some of the time somebody does just want to get given hey guys, here's your tasks to complete for the month. Please work flexibly to achieve them. So I think there's an onus on both the person and the employer.
Absolutely.
Which, we're often at the moment leaning towards, the employer's got to sort it out and have flexibility for everybody. But the onus is going to be on everybody to apply themselves to,
and very much on human resources to change everyone's position descriptions.
Spot on. Absolutely.
Yeah. So seeing this shift and seeing the power and the flexibility to employees and addressing their needs and addressing their wellbeing needs, are we then seeing this shift from this traditional patriarchal model to a company culture that reflects greater responsibility, is less controlling and more understanding of employees' needs?
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. And, like even yesterday I was on a Zoom call, like basic thing, but, Suki, my 3-year-old, came in on the call and, just chucked it on mute and whacked her up on my knee and kept on in the meeting. And, 12 months ago, I probably wouldn't have done that.
Yes.
Because I wouldn't have thought that it was appropriate or professional. It still probably wasn't professional, but anyway.
But it's just redefining, I think, a lot of words. Like, I think that, I did a recording with someone recently. It was a woman in business, and we really looked at the words well and the words success and what they actually mean. And we are changing the traditional meanings of a lot of these words, and that includes maybe the word professional. Like, what does professional mean? And is it the same as what we've always imagined it to be, or are we changing that line and realising that these things don't determine the success of a business?
Yeah, yes, I think for sure. And actually, we also had one of our people on the hub team. She's been with us for some time, and in a leadership role. And for personal reasons, she wanted to relocate interstate. And it's kind of like, the old way would have been, oh, gee, that's a shame. We're ashamed to see you go.
Yes. But,
she obviously, she's still with us, and we're giving it a bash, her working it from somewhere else. And, I think if we hadn't said that 12 months ago, it would have been innovative, but it probably wouldn't have worked either.
Yeah.
But I give it I think the likelihood of it working is actually, it's more likely going to work than not.
Yes.
And that's because a lot of the skills that her team and what forth and her has learned will probably make it possible.
Yes.
But previously we just didn't have those skills, and her team wouldn't have had those skills, so it probably wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So, that ability for a company and her team to all say that as something where, this can work.
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot.
And that she's going to have a voice. Like, I think employees are now starting to not just accept things, but having a voice and saying, well, actually, I think that I can make this work. Can we please give it a go?
And the likelihood is it
probably will.
Yeah.
So do you think that with this more room for employees to be their best, most authentic selves, creating space for creativity and innovation and more energy leading to enhanced connection and better business outcomes? So enabling them, like we're changing this line and humanising everything, and they're being able to be their authentic selves, which then creates space for them to not be stifled and be more creative and be more innovative and have more energy and feel better and be better. And does that lead to enhanced connection and then for better business outcomes?
Yes, but yes, and I think that what we'll see is that there's going to be a lot of people who, for instance, they were in a role that suited them in an old way of doing, but if they want to bring all of themselves to work, the organisation that they're in might not be the best spot for them.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to allow there that, okay, if you do want to, if you want to bring all of yourself to work.
Well, I don't mean every story and every personal situation.
No, I get it. I get it. And so it was probably not so much more there on the social or what you do outside of work. It's more from a if for instance you want to work from another location or do so, the style of work and what you do will probably also change because you're going to change.
Yes.
If you go and work from somewhere else.
True.
We've just got to allow for, on the surface, yes, if somebody's happier and somebody's more productive and somebody's getting to be themselves, I think that it is going to have a positive outcome on the organisation, provided that there's some good ground rules set.
Which probably leads me to the next area that I wanted to talk about, and that's that if this future work arrangement is becoming more hybrid and more flexible, do you believe that employers and employees require greater emotional intelligence and training? And training needs to change to focus on more of these personal development programs.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like I can hear all of the development consultants and leadership consultants.
Yay! Yeah, definitely. So things that come to my mind that really need, where I see a big gap in people's necessarily skill set, are things like ability to boundary set. And when is the line? Like if we are taking away this, we're becoming more flexible. When does work start? When does it end?
Yeah.
When can people contact people? When can't they contact people? Is it individual? Is it a set rule? How do you have assertive communication around these things, the discretion piece? And also for me, a big part of it is going to come down to this whole trust. And I think that a lot of people have inbuilt trust issues.
Sure.
And so, they're not used to working in this way. Like employers aren't used to working in the way where they put so much trust into the employees when they're not, it's like can't even see them in the space.
And, the way that you earn trust as well is by being face-to-face and building that relationship. So I don't know. I think it is tricky trying to build trust through a camera. Look, what I do, there's lots of blanket statements getting thrown around by everybody these days with how it's going to be. If I was to try and make one, it'll be if we ignore if we fail to apply some rules and some framework for how we redefine the new working relationship, then I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah.
So, having those open, honest conversations, between, one-on-one or as an organisation, do our actual values need to evolve? Does our organisation mission evolve? I think these are all, if you're not having those conversations, then you could find that you're caught out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really important thing. I've done work with small businesses to help them work on their missions and visions and values, and how, that is so crucial to making decisions for the business. That, so often bigger companies just have that on their website, but each employee never goes back to it to go, are my decisions aligned with the missions, visions and values of the company?
Yep.
And I think it's a perfect opportunity with so much change happening that companies do go back and reassess those values and the missions and the visions going forward, and how they can be met and what action needs to be taken in order for them to be met and for it to be a sort of a collaborative situation. So do you think that because, like you've just said, that you agree that these personal development programs need to be put in place more, and also different types of leadership type programs and communication programs, because a lot of those are addressing personal growth, which then hopefully leads to business growth, but it's not company specific always in some of those skills.
Yep.
Can you then see an opportunity that a lot of people are working in co-working spaces, that there's collaborative opportunity for these programs to be put in place, and then reducing the cost for each of the companies to do that?
Yeah, and I was only looking at something this morning where it was actually a program. We deliver some masterclasses. We would collaborate with another party, an external party. Sometimes they'll be members, sometimes they won't be members at Hub, but we would adapt our programming to add value to the members. Yes.
Yeah. And would that be something that if you've got, like you said, that a lot of the time in the hubs, not necessarily in all the other ones when there's little freelancers or entrepreneurs, but where you've got companies working and company teams working, that the companies, they take the cost, but they just split the cost.
That's spot on.
Yeah, and could this be also put in place for wellbeing programs? This is obviously emotional wellbeing that we're talking about, but for more other wellbeing areas that a lot of corporate companies do put in place, but sort of hesitant to spend the money. Is this something that allows, maybe when more companies work in co-working spaces, that general wellbeing programs happen?
And look, we already do some wellbeing programs.
Yeah.
I think it's always tricky with us with such a diverse membership base. There's always been this which programming do we put on? But I do think that when it comes to, for instance, hybrid working, wellness, these are things that can be put across any kind of company.
Yeah.
So it does bring I think it brings a sharper eye to the value that we can deliver to to businesses. And I think, look, this is where a lot of how the office has evolved here actually plays very well into the hands of co-working and what organisations have been looking for. Co-working has always, and you could go back to my comments at the start, it has been based in providing a connection when you come into work, because it's not just that you come into work to do work, and it's not that you just come into the office to achieve your company's goals.
Yes.
You also come into the workplace to achieve personal goals.
Yes.
And
that in turn can achieve company goals, because when we feel better and our individual needs feel more met, and we feel happier and more well generally, we're going to perform better.
Absolutely. And we often, whether you call it community or curation or activation or what for, recognising that there's an experience layer that's going to sit on top of every workplace, which you're going to have more customer experience people and less property people when it comes to the workplace, which is a really it's a shift in how we'll look at things. I'm not saying that property guys, don't worry guys, everybody's still going to be there, but the bar's going to get raised.
Yes.
So, and this is happening co-working constantly. Like what we were able to deliver 10 years, or let's not even talk about it, how it was 10 years ago in co-working, but even 5 years ago, you have to constantly raise the bar.
Yes.
But if I look at, for instance, if you've got 100 property people at the moment, you've got 50, customer experience people, in the future, there's still going to be the 100 property jobs there, but there's going to be 200 customer experience jobs, because you've got to make it so tantalising to want to get out of home and come into the office.
Yeah.
And people are going to do that because people and the companies that they work with are going to want to feel part of something bigger.
Absolutely, and that's the whole thing, isn't it? When you come to a workplace, you're part of something bigger than yourself. So do you think that this also caters for companies addressing individual needs, personalities and circumstances rather than a one-fit-size approach? So not only do we go, all right, you're allowed to work home, everyone's allowed to work home at home for 2 days a week, do they then actually take it a step further to go, let's actually look at your individual needs, your individual circumstance? Do you have a family? Are you living further out? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? What makes you feel good? What's going to be... how do you work? Really address the self-knowledge piece.
Yep. Don't mean to put a bet at each way. It's going to be both. First of all, though, and this is where I do think that there will be some movement and turnover. Like what you still need to do is just say I'm going for the new job.
Yes.
And it could. When I've got my position description in front of me, it says, okay, this company, you must be in at the office Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Or Mondays and Fridays, whatever it is, because these are our days that that we're all in there as a company.
Yes.
If you cannot do that, don't worry about applying for this job.
Yeah.
There are other jobs, and so I do think that there will be that. But then, so there'll be the non-negotiables.
Yes.
And then there'll be the negotiables.
And I think that's really important because, like you said, if work is a place where you're trying to create a specific experience while you're there, and then half the team aren't there on those days. You can't actually coordinate that we have everyone in on a Tuesday per se. We're never going to create that experience and environment if half the people aren't there and it's empty. Yeah, good point. So I want to talk a little bit about going back to this piece about equality that we talked about before, diversity and equality, and you said that it allows people to hire people from anywhere because you don't necessarily need to be in the office. Does that mean that the companies are able to now address more of the diversity issues and also the gender equality?
Yes. I think, yes, and particularly for having flexible options for women to work around families,
yes,
I think is going to be a great one. You'll still have to have certain rules in place, and it won't suddenly, address everything overnight. But yeah, I do think it comes into play. There's also particularly if not everybody needs to be in a CBD area, then you're going to have options for people to, still have a great job but not have come into the city.
Yeah, so people that live in rural areas can start applying for jobs where they may not have applied for those jobs. They may be the best. They may have incredible skill set, add extreme value to a certain company, but not apply because they don't want to travel all that way.
And that's going to hopefully, make a distribution of income and more equitable outcomes. There's another world of thought on this though, that actually out of all of this, we're going to get even more inequality in incomes because when people can sell their services globally, you're no longer constrained by any one market. So that there is still going to be a rich get richer, and we did actually see that just over the last 12 months. And, in fact, it was quite shocking how, some people actually benefited from,
yes,
and some people went backwards. So, look, hopefully it can create a larger middle, but I don't think this is necessarily going to mean that you don't have huge discrepancies in inequality of income.
Yeah.
But I know where you're more going, and I think it's a really good outcome though of hybrid work in the workplace.
Yes.
Will be to have greater gender participation in the workforce.
Yeah, and greater demographic as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So. I would love to explore what you just that point you just said more, but I'm really aware of your time and how busy you are, so I'm not going to go further into that bit.
I think just on that though, it goes more into the workforce as
yes.
opposed to the workplace.
Yes.
And look, there are definitely other people that you could speak to more around the workforce side of things, because we go into me. I got thoughts on it, but not.
Yes.
Experiences on it, so I'll stick with the workplace.
Yeah, definitely. So, assuming that most companies do what they do to create an impact in the world.
Yep.
And although many companies may achieve this by creating solutions to make people's lives more efficient or easier with the products or services that they offer, many do not consider the environmental impact or make sustainable or regenerative choices.
Yep.
Does co-working address this, and how?
Good one. Look, I guess so first up, as Hub as a company, so it still comes down to each of a company needs to make certain choices. We run as a certified carbon neutral organisation. We have so for 12 months, and then we've also got a certification that the product that we deliver, so when anybody signs up for an office or a desk here, we've already taken care of the offsetting of the carbon and delivered it in a certain way. And other companies can choose to do that as well. So there is a big onus on the company to choose to, I guess, apply its resources in a way. And I think we'll continue to see that the way organisations apply those resources is by making choices like, well, let's be certified carbon neutral, let's be B Corp certified, let's do all of those things. The biggest driver, though, in this will be the mobility of talent. So the mobility of people to say, I'm going to work here or I'm going to work there. And then as soon as you see people being able to choose where they work, based on the credentials of that organisation, that's going to see talent either sticking with you or talent moving away from you.
Yeah.
Yes, the customer can also make those decisions and needs to make those decisions, which will drive an organisation to act in a certain way. But I think in an economy where there's a war for talent and everybody's moving to knowledge worker positions, you're going to see a lot more AI and robotics and what forth, which means that the work that that more humans do is going to be around creativity, is going to be around, you talked about EQ before,
yeah.
They're going to be around roles that require things that humans are actually just better at still at delivering than a machine will.
Yes.
So it's all going to be about the talent, and where they go will be increasingly where organisations have the right environmental and social choices and culture in their fabric.
Yeah, and do you think that also adding to that by shared office working, that we're also just sharing resources is
absolutely
helping with environmental impact?
One of the ways that we reduce the environmental impact is it's just simply a lot more efficient use of space in a co-working office space.
Yeah.
That sense of culture and community also plays into people wanting to make certain decisions. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you did talk about Hub. I mean, Hub as I've, had a look, and it says that it is recognised as an employer of choice in Great Workplaces to Work ranking. Okay, so Hub's recognised as an employer of choice in the Great Workplaces to Work rankings. Do you think employer of choice is becoming a priority for organisations now that employees are having more of a voice around their needs? Now, I'm wondering, are they prioritising this in above what maybe putting flexibility gives employees, like really caring?
Yeah.
So, for example, when I worked in corporate wellbeing, a lot of the reason that the company chose to have the wellbeing program and the fitness centre and all those things on site was possibly a little bit to do with the wellbeing of the employees and, to reduce absenteeism and increase productivity and all those things. But I would say a primary reason was just to be an employer of choice.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. Look, I think the internet and how information's distributed has constantly meant that it's harder and harder to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. Like, people can see a direct link between this and this.
Yes.
And when you walk into a space or you're employed with a company, at the end of the day, people can sense if what's going on isn't what it said on the label. So we want what it says on the label to match with the experience that we have, and whenever they're not in line, it again goes back to talent can walk and talent can go anywhere, and talent can choose to work for companies that aren't even in the city that they're based in. So as long as that's there, that's going to keep the pressure on the organisation to walk the talk.
Yeah. And I think that in some ways, although it can be seen as, wow, you're not really caring about our needs and you're just putting this in place to be an employer of choice and attract great talent, it's not necessary, although that sounds really manipulative and a really negative thing, in some ways, as someone who has worked in wellbeing for so many years, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. If that's the vehicle and driver to get a company to do wellbeing, in the end, they're going to get those same outcomes and benefits from having the programs in place or by having the flexible working arrangements or whatever choices they're making to be that employer of choice. The people are still getting those benefits, and therefore we are still creating a more well workplace and more well individuals and more connected and well individuals. Yeah. So I think that regardless of the driver, it's still a positive.
Yeah, and the alternative, well, let's just not do anything.
Yes.
I think, look, organisations are going to need to just constantly hold themselves to account and keep getting better. So, whilst the wellness program might have been this in 1 year, if it's still the same wellness program in 5 years from now, you can be pretty sure that it's out of date.
Agreed.
And people are going to have to keep evolving it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So if we've talked a lot about the benefits of this new working arrangement, we've talked about some of the challenges of it, and working towards more companies looking at a co-working arrangement or a hybrid model. I want to look at the flip side and look at a couple of things that come to mind against this new model of working arrangements. And one of those things is that we talked briefly about a company's mission and visions and how ideally an employee's choices and actions that they take are in line with the company's mission and vision. Mm-hmm. If you're working in an environment where you've got a whole lot of different companies, does it distract from the company you're working for, mission and vision, and do you possibly lose focus and disconnect from your own company's mission and vision?
It's a good question. Look, I'd hazard to say that a lot of that is still based in when people think of a co-working space, it's the big open room with lots of people working in it. But a co-working space is not that. Like, most people who work at a co-working space have their own private office, and they share amenities. So they get to have their own culture and get to maintain their own mission. Mm. But then, yes, when they come together in certain shared amenities, I guess they're side by side other cultures and missions. What we find is that, so for instance, if you're at the larger company level, and certainly at Hub as well, we'll have your own entrance. If you wanted to, you could walk in and you'll have a dedicated kitchen, dedicated meeting rooms. So you essentially have your own suite in your own colours with your own kitchen. And, if you wanted to, you could come in and you need not actually rub shoulders with any other company. Or you then have the choice, though, to then engage in the co-working community as you want. What we've seen for a smaller organisation is that over time, with hundreds and thousands of businesses having used co-working, is that the benefits of having the shared amenity and, the technology and the way that it's all set up far outweighs the poorer office that you would have had if you tried to build it yourself, because you just would have run out of funds, you would have run out of money, and it would have been more expensive, and it still wouldn't have been as at the same level that the co-working space was, with the ability to share a lot of the amenity there. So we've seen that a company's culture does survive intact even when you put it in a shared workspace surrounded by other companies.
Do you see a more collaborative mindset shift compared to a competitiveness that may have been before?
I think that there's still competition there. Yes, you see some co-working spaces which are much more competitive than others, but you also see that there's, I get ultimately, when we talk about our mission there, creating workspaces that people love, it wasn't like the businesses that win. It wasn't, your most productive companies in the world. It's really focused on how do we create a workspace that people love, and that mission means that certain companies will engage with it, and other organisations won't engage with it. I have heard of another organisation putting to me that we didn't want to pick the best workspace. We need, a lot of our employees are working in factories and what forth, so we wanted to pick something that was a kind of on the same level of amenity. What I do love here is that workspace is becoming something that is about experience and brand. And what's happening is that there's a whole industry of workspace as a service providers emerging where companies can pick the right kind of workspace for their organisation. And I reckon that's a good thing, because if we can get a fit between workspaces and their cultures and their missions, then I think everybody's going to be set up for success. Whereas though if you're shoving round pegs into square holes in terms of this company into the wrong workplace, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that no matter which company you're from, and no matter how, whether it's a company that's more old school or a company that's more progressive, in the end, each company knows that connection enhances success. And so setting up spaces that provide opportunities for connection are always going to be better. And that goes from looking at whether you're in a workplace or whether you're looking at across the road from here, Federation Square, and how they've actually set up the space. I mean, I did another interview last year with someone who is a leader in the placemaking space.
Yep.
And so, really talking about actually creating spaces into places.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, it really, I suppose, enables the individual companies not to have a department or a person that is employed to work on that. Whereas when you're in a co-working space, you can actually appoint someone whose job it is to create the environment.
To create that. Exactly. Yep.
Yes. Very good, very good. So much we've talked about. There's so much more I would like to talk about, but I am very aware of your valuable time. So in today's conversation, it's evident that company culture, leadership style, working arrangements, and workspace setup all have an influence on creating connection and the overall well-being of a business and its people. So I hope you've enjoyed the episode today. So thank you so much, Brad, for all your...
I've enjoyed getting to have this chat.
Yeah.
We haven't chatted in ages.
I know.
And we're getting to talk about all these different things. It's great.
I know. So many insights. You're such a leader in this area, true visionary, and it's just been a real pleasure chatting with you today.
As it has with you,
Thanks. So if you're listening today, we'd love to know what your biggest insight or takeaway is from today's conversation. Leave a comment and let us know. And if you'd like to follow Brad or want to find out more details about the Hub, how can they do that?
Just you head to hubaustralia.com and you'll be able to find my details and, of course, the details of Hub, and where you can come and check it out.
Perfect. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and consider subscribing to the Wellthy Living podcast on iTunes and YouTube. To find out more about my services, you can visit my website at wellthyliving.com.au or connect with me on any of my social media channels. So until next time, remember, connection is medicine.